D4, is that right? Yes, I'm giving you a thumbs up. I can't actually see the thumb because it's dark there, but there we go. If you use that, your comment will appear behind the speaker. And give it a second, because last year what happened was there was one talk that may not have gone quite as planned or as well as the speaker wanted, and of course a lot of angry, irate comments appeared behind the speaker. So remember that when you tweet. Think before you tweet. There we go. So that hashtag again is hashtag OECD4, because we're in room number 4. There's also the app, and the cards are by your chair on how to use that. The app is Bcast. And yes, I think that's probably everything. So, I think that's all for the perfunctory stuff. Let's get into the subject of the talk. So this talk is entitled Artificial Intelligence, a Double-Edged Sword. So the question is really, is AI as promising as it is dangerous? It's sort of a premise that's been elucidated well in the works of science fiction writers such as Stanislaw Lem, Isaac Asimov, and of course the Terminator movies in the all-controlling AI known as Skynet. I'm sure you all know that movie, or the works of Stanislaw Lem. But as is often the way, good sci-fi becomes science reality. So about 5 months ago, the world witnessed this really, what I think was an amazing event. Certainly an amazing event in artificial intelligence. AlphaZero, the game-playing AI created by Google, beat the world's best chess-playing computer program. Now, computers obviously have been beating not just humans, but other computers at chess since 1997. But AlphaZero started off knowing nothing about chess except the most basic rules. It taught itself how to beat the best chess program out there just on its own, right? But the question is, how long did it take for it to do that? Can you just put up your hands if you have any suggestions or answers, or just shout them out? How long do you think it took? A day, 2 hours? The answer is 4 hours. So between you two. 4 hours is all it took to learn the basic rules, from just knowing the basic rules of chess to beating the world's best chess program out there. That's fascinating. So look, I think that just gives you some kind of insight into how how AI as an exponential technology really is, can be all-encompassing. So this morning, speaking on that topic, we have Dudu Mimram. He has spent the last 12 years as CTO of Telecom Innovation Laboratories in Israel and as the CTO of the Cybersecurity Research Center at Ben-Gurion University. He's co-founded multiple startups and co-published over 50 patents and research papers. And his areas of interest range from cybersecurity, big data, IoT, fintech, blockchain, and of course, AI. Please welcome to the stage our first speaker, Dudu Mimram.
Thank you. Good morning.
Do we want to get the slides up?
Yeah, I think so. Could be helpful. Thank you. So thank you, Shivi, for the introduction. I wanted to give a little bit background about myself. I'm, for the last 25 years, working in cybersecurity on the cutting edge of technologies in many roles, and also working in artificial intelligence, really seeing the cutting edge being developed and other technologies. And I wanted to discuss today actually one aspect of artificial intelligence that many don't pay attention to, and I think it will be actually quite important for all of us to understand it and maybe to take some action upon it. When thinking about artificial intelligence, or the main concept of artificial intelligence in recent years, then we are talking about artificial intelligence as an extension to humans. Most of the imagination goes into how us humans are thinking and behaving and working, and then how we can, with machines and algorithms, create a much more extended powers. And in a way, it's a good thing because we are going to get superpowers. So definitely this is the good aspect of of artificial intelligence. And I try to actually to look at the main areas of artificial intelligence that are being developed and where we see actually quite interesting results. The first one is artificial senses. We have human senses like vision and hearing. And when you think about autonomous driving, then we are talking about a capability, an artificial vision capability to drive the car. Or when we are talking about real-time translation of languages, then this is an extension of our hearing capability, but also comprehension capability. And also for robotics, it's some kind of extension of the human physical capabilities. The second area, which is actually the main area of investment and development, is about comprehension. Comprehension is a human trait, human capability to understand things, to identify patterns, to detect things. And what we are seeing more and more capabilities that are inserted via AI into machines about understanding things. And this maybe relates to the example of AlphaZero. And the last, and this is actually the frontier of artificial intelligence, is about decision making. And again, this is a human capability that is being transformed into machine. And there are certain algorithms and research areas and products that are focused on taking decisions, smart decisions. But I want to take maybe a higher level point of view about artificial intelligence and to see how it fits into the timeline of the technology revolution. Because when we started, actually, we had only hardware. The first inventions were hardware, and software was invented basically to operate this hardware. And technology wasn't a big part of our lives. We had maybe the geeks or the research labs or the government working with technology, but it wasn't a big part of our lives. In recent 20 years, software, I think, really swiped us across the board, starting from smartphones and mobile applications, web services that everyone are using, digital consumption of movies and games, etc. When you think about organizations, then most of the activity or the core competences are relied on software. And the last part is actually artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence, technically speaking, is part of software because it is an evolution of software, but this is like the third stage. And the reason I'm showing this slide is that across the time of my work, I was always thinking, how much control do we have on technology? At what point in time we are becoming dependent on technology? And when I'm saying dependent, I'm talking about our lives and way of living and the way our societies work. And I think we passed that point. And artificial intelligence is going to take us from that point very fast. And I think some believe we have the illusion of control, but I don't believe anymore that we can actually unplug it and then continue living the same way we lived before. And that means technology is becoming a very important foundation of our life. And once you think about technology as a big foundation of our life, then we want the foundations that we are building to be solid and to be strong and to be something that we can build upon. And me as a cybersecurity expert, I'm seeing quite a bit of these holes in the technological foundations that are being abused mostly by actually the area of cyber attackers or cyber hackers. And when I'm talking about cyber attacks, I'm not going into specific genres. I'm not talking about cyber warfare specifically or cyber crime, which is actually the main engine behind cybersecurity. Something happened is that the combination of our dependency on technology and on the other hand, the people with motivation and ability to actually create damage or answer the monetary goals actually are abusing these holes. And I want to explain why actually cybersecurity or cyber threat is not a passing episode. Many times I meet CEOs and they are treating cybersecurity as some kind of a disease that will be eventually be fixed by engineers, and then technology will continue its innovation. And I think the reasons we have problems of cybersecurity are so basic and so elementary in the way we humans are thinking and building things that it will stay on, and this is it will become a very serious risk. The first one is actually human errors. We make errors. This is something that is very human across the history. But when we imprint these errors into technology that is eventually meant to stay there and work there, this is a very easy opportunity for attackers to actually exploit these errors or bugs, maybe in a more technical jargon, in order to achieve their goals. The second thing, when you are really thinking about computing or technology as we know it, it is pretty predictable. Even if it seems very sophisticated, you have on your phone crazy capabilities, but still it is very predictable. When you take a computer or you take software and you give it a certain type of input, you will always get the same output. And this predictability plays a lot into the hands of cyber attackers, which can actually understand their target and create cyber attacks which are effective. And the last part is complexity. When you are thinking about the history of building technology, or let me give you an example. When you go, for example, to a bank, and you take a look at the IT infrastructure inside the bank, you are going to see there technologies that have been invented 40 years ago and have been invented 20 years ago, and all of them are connected in some kind of a patchwork. This creates actually complexity of technology, and this complexity eventually is a great opportunity for attackers. And one thing that we saw rising seriously in recent years is actually the motivation. To be today a cyber attacker is a very, in a way, good career choice. You can actually make a lot of money. You can achieve your goals very easily. You cannot be caught, technically. This is a very difficult technological problem. It's very difficult to find the attackers. So people that can actually consider that, or nations consider this avenue of activity, then the motivation is there, and it is really growing. So my assumption or my understanding are cyber threats are here to stay. I've shown some graph on the evolution of cyber threats across time. And my first job after the army, I was managing the R&D of an antivirus company. That was at 97. And at 97, we had a research lab, and we used to get something around a new genre of virus every month. And that was exciting time. We used to research it and to create some kind of a cure for that. But this is actually the start of wave of cybersecurity. But anyone that is seeing this graph sees that something happened around 2013. And what happened around 2013 is that cyber attacks or cyber warfare has become a much more easier path to achieve things. And that relates basically based on our high level of adoption of technology, but also on sophistication on cyber attackers' side. The fact that they are collaborating, they are reusing tools, they are putting a lot of money into that, so they are achieving much more goals. And this is actually the second wave. And my point in this presentation is actually speaking about the third wave. I started speaking about that at UNESCO event 2 years ago. And back then, actually, I got quite a bit of backlash from peers in the industry saying to me that I'm just scaring people. But as you see in the picture, the idea here is that humans are not the only ones behind the keyboards of attackers. And my main thesis or my main point is that if we think that cyber attackers are very strong and intelligent and has a lot of money, how come we assume that they are not going to use artificial intelligence, which is widely available? With $1,000, you can actually get access to the most advanced and cutting-edge AI technology. How come they wouldn't use AI inside their cyber attacks and cyber threats? And if they will use that, and I'm saying if, but they are actually starting to use that, we will see much faster attacks because we are taking the human factor from that. We are going to see much cheaper attacks to build because all the intelligent parts that they use to craft into the attacks are going to be taken off, and the attacks will become much more intelligent. I know quite a bit about the landscape of cyber defense technologies, and I can say with quite a high guarantee that I don't think any organization in the world is actually capable to deal with the third wave. But I'm not only for bad news here. I think there are things to do about that. So I think we should have a global governance, and governance means regulation for technology. And I'm saying global because first, this event is about being together, but global means is important because technology is global. So once you only create regulation that is specific for nations, then you are mostly creating a defensible strategy, and you are not creating a proactive, enforceable strategy. The second part is the transparency, which is about creating the trust between all the peers in the industry and not something to be only government specific. And the last part is actually that the regulation needs to build technology. Because in order to enforce regulation on technology, you need to have technological capabilities. All the system of law and justice and crime and legal measures are good for the physical world, but for the technological world, you need actually enforcement that is being enforced by technology, and artificial intelligence will play a big role in that technology of governance. The second point is actually markets need to pressure for higher quality and much more safer technologies. I don't think anyone would imagine buying food that you would get a warning on that you could get poisoning maybe. So we have expectation for products we are buying, and I think the market should put pressures on technology vendors about security. The next point is actually about research. Many topics in the area of cybersecurity is, in a way, everybody's problem and nobody's problem. For example, let's take a look at attribution. Attribution is the ability to actually track the attacker or to track the criminal. And this is something that is not a specific vendor technology. This is an infrastructure that should be laid out, something very similar to internet. Or for example, the internet infrastructure, which is actually exists 50 years ago, and when people conceived that, no one thought that there will be something like that, like cyber attackers. So there are certain topics that should have some kind of collaboration in terms of research. One paradigm we should get rid of, and this is a major weakness point for cybersecurity, is actually centralized systems. And that's very easy to understand. Once you have a centralized system, you can actually hack into the center and impact everything. And we have blockchain. I'm not going to go into blockchain, but one attribute of blockchain is actually its ability of distribution. And in order to tackle blockchain, you need actually to hack all the parts of it. And the last point, and I think it fits the theme of this event, is actually collaboration. Eventually, we cannot tackle this cyber threat on our own, not in a very specific organization, not in a very specific government. It's all about collaboration, both on knowledge and tools. This is a very fast-pacing field, and we need to be able to actually cooperate in order to create proper defense.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. So we slightly overran, obviously, at the beginning of the talk. We'll try to keep all 15 minutes. We might have to stop a little bit early. I'll get signals from the people around, the important people around the room to tell me what to do. Let's get in with some questions. I'm going to ask my own question first, but if you put your hands up, then we'll try and get to you straight after. Thank you for the talk, Dudu. That was fascinating. Let me ask you this. What happens when you have AI? And do you want to just stand in the center there so the camera can catch you and the rest of the audience can catch you? What happens when you have AI employed as both an offensive measure but also as a defensive measure, right? Because governments and people wanting to protect infrastructure will want to do that. So, i.e., you have AI going up against AI. What happens then?
I have several comments about that. First, actually, you are touching the point that the only way to defend against offensive cyber threats, which are using AI, is actually defense, autonomous defense, and AI in defense. There are something around like already 20 startups that are building these capabilities, and also governments investing into that. I don't think enough. But that's going to be like the only measure for that, because the speed of activities, it will take out the opportunity for humans to respond to this event. And the question is, in that case, what would be the human role? And actually, the human role is on situational awareness. The human role will just fine-tune. It's like generals in the combat. They will just fine-tune the machines. Right. But eventually, it's going to be machines against machines.
There we go. More machines taking humans' work. Yes, we should have the lady at the front, and then we've got a lady at... Oh, the lady at the back's already got the mic, so let's go with her.
Great presentation, very logical. I was interested...
Do you want to just say who you are and where you're from, if you don't mind?
Wendy McGuinness from New Zealand. Thank you. I was interested in the third wave you discussed, and I just want to kind of understand what those scenarios would look like. I just think you sort of touched on it quite lightly, and I'd love to know more.
I'm not sure I got
the third wave. Do you want to elaborate on the third wave? What you meant?
Wave, the third wave.
Sorry.
The third wave is actually something that will be very difficult to spot. But we, for example, the people that are defenders, we are going to see a very steep acceleration in sophistication of attacks and speed of attacks. And eventually, one of the impacts that will happen is actually twofold. One is freezing systems, because we saw that already, even with simplistic attacks that attacked hospitals. Basically, the only measure was to shut down systems. And the other point is actually inhibiting innovation, because what's happening is that once you are fast running into the market with innovation, you are actually creating more and more holes. So it won't be actually transparent in terms of like machine creatures attacking people, but actually the threat of cyber warfare and cyber security will be much more prevalent in our lives.
Thank you.
I'm Elena Miteva from the OECD. I have a simple question. What is keeping you awake at night, and what are the threats that may make us already homo deus, basically people who are able to threaten the survival of humanity and the Earth because of artificial intelligence?
What keeps me up at night, besides my baby boy, is I'm quite worried about the fact that cybersecurity is actually something today that is being taken as an initiative of standalone organizations. So, for example, if I'm consulting the consortium of the eight largest banks in Europe. And if I'm talking to one of them, then because they are investing money in cybersecurity, they perceive that as their own competitive advantage. But eventually, this is a very serious weakness point, because the attackers are global in that sense. And the main actually competitive capability in defense is actually about knowledge exchange, about knowing about emerging threats, about knowing about the latest tools, how to operate these tools, how to reuse human expertise across organizations. So we are not there yet. I think we will move into that. There are several initiatives, but I think this is like the main thing that I see. I think when you think about AI, there are like two threats for AI. One of them is actually the good threat of AI in a way that it will do automation and it will change society. This is something that is happening, but it is gradually happening. And the second one, which is really long-term, about AI is becoming self-conscious and harmful machines and killing us all. To be honest, I didn't understand why they would have the interest to do that in that sense. But I think a more pragmatic concern is actually the use of cyber attackers by technologies of AI, which are very available, very cheap. They are very smart. They are highly motivated. They have a lot of funding. So I think I'm more worried on that, but maybe that's I'm coming from cybersecurity.
I feel very comforted that you've brought a child into the world. That's good, knowing all that you know already.
I brought 3 of them.
3, excellent, great. That's a good, positive message. We've got a gentleman at the back there and then one over here.
Thank you very much. I'm a retired OECD official, and you concentrate on cybersecurity. My question is more general. How do we make sure that humans remain in control after artificial intelligence has surpassed human intelligence? Or is it actually desirable that humans are not in control once machine intelligence is superior to human intelligence?
I think when you break the word dependency, then you have 2 aspects. One of them is the level of intelligence, which actually makes you feel that they are becoming stronger than us. But dependency has a more pragmatic approach. For example, the hospitals. It's not highly intelligent systems, but still we are dependent on that. If they don't have their IT systems or research labs, then that would be a very serious problem. So I think we are already quite dependent on technology, regardless of the acceleration that is being done on artificial intelligence. And I don't think you can control innovation. Because you might control innovation, for example, in France, but you won't be able to control innovation in China or in North Korea or in small groups, because this is about knowledge and creation. So I think that the answer to that is actually the governance, but I believe I'm much more believer in the model of global governance, or at least the ones that are participating in that, and technologically driven governance. Because just governance by setting rules and then going after people in lawsuits is not enough, because technology is something that is always dynamic. So you need to have some kind of enforcement that is working on the same level. Let me give you maybe another example. Let's say there was all the fuss on Facebook with the data leakage. And now there are laws of GDPR to prevent or to control the data privacy. But Facebook is a service that they are updating their service maybe 100 times a day, because they are a very innovative company. And you cannot know whether they had some kind of bug that actually leaked all your data, whether that was intentional or not. But you are not aware to that. You cannot be aware to that as human. So only technology can actually monitor, for example, Facebook systems from the outside and understand if they are actually breaking regulation. And this is actually where AI will help us humans as extension for humans to create an efficient governance and enforcement.
We've got about four or 5 minutes left and lots of questions. So the lady over here in green.
Hi there, thank you for a really interesting talk. Natasha Tarak, CNBC. 2 quick ones, if that's all right. How vulnerable are we to, and by we I mean OECD countries, developed countries, to imminent attacks on critical infrastructure like power grids, traffic control systems? How vulnerable are we to basically just imminent attacks on these systems? And also, in your opinion, who poses the greatest threat in terms of a state actor for cyber attacks in this new sort of paradigm that we have of hybrid warfare? Thanks.
When you are asking the level of vulnerability, from a technological point of view, we are vulnerable. So if, for example, all the security defense people would take a vacation of 1 week, we were going to see really bad things happening. But the good thing is that we are having many good people in many countries that are also collaborating in order to maintain this high level of defense. So in a way, it is really like crime and law enforcement chase. So we are seeing that we are able to maintain some kind of a good level of defense. But again, this is against the second wave of sophistication. And before the second wave of sophistication, no one actually expected that. And it took us several years to get into this ramp of defense. So I'm not sleeping well by the fact that we are not seeing nuclear meltdowns or grid of electricity not being attacked. When you are asking, actually, you ask which are the worst actors. Yeah. So there are the ones that are very popular on the media, like groups maybe in North Korea or some groups in the Middle East. But the point to grasp about cyber actors is that you don't need a very large nation with billions of budgets like regular defense in order to create a threat. You just need a group of geniuses with connectivity and some elaborate plans in order to create real damage. So in a way, the threat is being also distributed, which is a very, very bad thing. So that's why actually I pointed into actually going in the defense side into distributed systems.
Okay. I think possibly the final question.
Hi, my name is Vladimir. I'm from Germany, working for Semalytics. an AI, fast-growing AI startup that turns unstructured data like text into structured data. My question is, what can startups like us, who are actually developing the technology, do in order to reduce the overall risk of cybercrime or increase cybersecurity?
So this is actually a great last question, because one of the sins that we are paying for in a way is that technology is a very fast-paced industry, because you have investors and you need to take a product into the market, and Google is competing with Facebook, so everything is very fast. And for us defenders, when we think about security, the best security is security by design, which means when you are building the product, you need to put something around 20% of your budget in order to design the product properly. But to be honest, it never happens. And security is always an afterthought. Always people are building, pushing the products into the market, and then waking up that it is vulnerable in this area and in that area. So if you see that as a personal mission, and I think it's a good thing, because eventually it's going to become some kind of a competitive barrier that if your startup will answer that, you will become competitive on your own, then you should invest into that. But eventually, when I'm seeing it, the high level, from a high level point of view, the phenomena, then it is mostly an afterthought, adding security to technology.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for our speaker, Dudu Mimram. And thank you very much. We have another talk in about 15 minutes, which will start on time. The talk is Innovating for a Sustainable Future with Rob Nile, and it starts at 10:45. Thank you very much for all your questions, and thank you for joining us.